Good. I think we're coming in now, and just letting that do that. Good. Hi, Kapil. Hi. Good to see you.
Hi, good evening. Good to see you too.
So this is the first chat back in Dog Centre Care for a little bit. So you have that dubious honour, but it's great. I've been really looking forward to this. We had a wonderful conversation a week or so ago, and we were hoping to meet up at the conference in Dublin. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I think everybody had an amazing time there. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Say hi, everybody, when you come in. Let us know where you're at as well, and you can put all that into the comments, and it's always good to see where you're at. Well, great. Well, we've been looking to get together for a while, and just the nature of things, it hasn't quite happened, but now we're here now. And I think it'd be a good place to start to find for the audience to know what it is that what you do, and and what you do even within your kind of home environment on the rescue side of things, and also the kind of educational stuff. So tell us
Uh,
what you get up to.
so for me, right, I mean, finding my purpose or finding my why was pretty much to improve the welfare of dogs around me. Uh, and whatever helps me move forward in that mission is what I do. So it's very difficult to say, oh, I do this specific thing or that specific thing, but it really depends on at that moment of time what I believe is the best way to move towards the mission of improving welfare for dogs, especially the free roaming dogs in my city and then further onwards in the whole country. At this moment, most of my time or my focus is on research and education. Uh, like most people, I think we have all given up on adults changing their point of views and adults, changing how they perceive dogs. So what I've been doing for the past couple of years is going to schools, especially public schools, which are government run or helped by different non-profit organizations, and doing sessions with them because they are the ones who a lot of times live around dogs within their home environments. So for them to understand how to be around them, how to be respectful, what to do if you're scared, what to do if you uh, you know genuinely see a dog and just get like shivers in your body or something like that, right? So how do you move on from there? And it's a very slow process, right? For kids at that stage, it pretty much begins by just showing them photos of dogs, then videos of dogs and other children playing with dogs, all in videos. So we are still very far away. I never take a dog to any of these sessions because again, not for the dog as well, right? It's not great for the dog necessarily. Uh, so a lot of time goes in that. Simultaneously, been doing research work, and uh, I'm hopeful that sometime next year I'll be starting my PhD in dog human companionship. Uh, so with the it's called the Center of Compassionate Conservation at the University of Technology in Sydney, and they have been doing uh, research projects in India for a while now. So I've been helping them out with collecting data and uh, doing some academic work. I don't come from an academic background, so it's all very new to me, very interesting, and I see the value of it. Uh, but ultimately, I would want anything that I do academically to help or actually have some sort of impact or influence that benefits the dogs in general, right? Uh, been going around observing dogs, looking at dogs, talking to people, not just in my city, but also outskirts, in the villages, rural environments, how that differs. It's very interesting because uh, while I was talking to people, the general feeling is that unless a dog has rabies, a dog will never bite you. So they're not scared of dogs. Only if the dog is biting, they would automatically assume that the dog has rabies, and unfortunately, they will have to kill the dog. But otherwise, they are like, there's no issues with the dogs because there's just so much space, right, for the dogs as well to escape a potential conflict. Is just so much easier in a village area as compared to an urban area. So we see a lot of conflict, dog-human conflict, dog-dog conflict in urban environments, in cities, and unfortunately, that conflict between dogs and people has now upgraded itself to a conflict between people and people. So people who love dogs versus people who are, scared of dogs or don't share that same feelings towards dogs. And it's become a very sensitive, very emotional topic because a lot of people who do not like dogs, but also are exposed to, uh, Western world per se, they would always say that, hey, there are no dogs in the US or in a lot of Western countries in general. And that's a sign of um, developed society. Uh, so uh, just because of that, right? Then they tend to just make it a big deal about just the presence of the dog. So it doesn't even matter if the dog is um barking, aggressive, or just all those things that they tend to anyway exaggerate, right? Um, so I still spend a lot of time actively mediating conflicts between people in communities. Wherever there's a lot of where the density of population of dogs and people is high, there tends to be more issues. And we see a lot of this happening in college campuses because within a campus there would be 20, 30, 40, 50 dogs sometimes, right? And uh, because students younger in age, probably, I don't know why, but they have more empathy for the dogs. So they tend to want to care for the dogs, but at the same time, they have a conflict with professors, administration, staff, cleaners, a lot of different people who don't want the dogs to be there. And right now, nobody really knows. Okay, so what is the best thing to do? Should we be feeding dogs? Should we be not feeding dogs? Uh, what is exactly the best way to make sure that people and dogs coexist peacefully? Um, so yeah, so a lot of work goes on in that aspect, visiting campuses, making an assessment of how many dogs are there, and then getting the basics done, right? Vaccinating the dog, so at least that fear of rabies is reduced. But more than rabies itself, it's the trauma of taking those vaccinations. If you are bit, uh, is also what drives fear amongst people as well. Um, so that's going on. And I have written, sorry, you were gonna say
No,
something?
no, no, no. Carry on, please.
And I've written a book for kids, children's book that it came about also from just giving the kids the same values but through a story, because normally a lot of my workshops are uh, just teaching, or uh, they feel like a classroom, and I I as a child did not like anything that is being taught to me in a classroom setting. Um, and I love stories personally, so I feel a story would have a better impact, and at the same time, um, they can learn those values, um, to have empathy, respect, kindness as well, right? And there are a lot of studies which show that cruelty towards animals also upgrades to cruelty towards people, and especially in domestic violence, sexual domestic abuse cases as well. So it's a very important thing to not be cruel to animals and dogs as well. Uh, so yeah, that's what's going on as well.
Well, when we spoke before, I said to you, I don't know how you manage to do all the things you do, actually, because there's a lot of things you do. There's so many things I want to look at. So I think we'll pick at different bits. We'll come back to the book in a bit. I have to say I've read it. myself. And even as a 54-year-old man, I loved it. And it's an amazing book, and it's very clever on many levels, actually. So we'll definitely come back to that. And I think what I love about your approach, it's a very pragmatic one, I think. You know, and you know, you don't make a lot of judgment calls on stuff. It's just recognizing, well, this is what it is, and so it is. But I think what I'd like to look at first is because you have experience of doing the observations of the dogs in the urban setting, the rural setting, and also on a beach setting.
Mhm.
If we could perhaps look at what you've found by looking at those dogs, like you've touched on it a little bit there, I know, but we could kind of go into a bit deeper on those things, about how you see those different presentations and how that ends up increasing more conflict, and that creates more changes in the behavioral outputs again. So take either one of those settings that you want to share.
So I'll start with the beach dogs because they're my favorite dogs to observe.
Mhm.
Uh, what I've noticed, again, not haven't done anything academically in this specific setting, but beach dogs don't have a threat to their life from traffic and vehicles. So there's about 60% of deaths of dogs is directly or indirectly because of humans. And cars and scooters play a huge role in that. But because that threat is just not existent because there are no cars and scooters on a beach. So I've seen them to be a lot more uh, just free in their movement, very very relaxed in how they go about. They are very comfortable around people, but also because on a beach, there's not much opportunity to scavenge or hunt. Their dependency on humans for food is a lot higher. So you see a lot of dogs hang around people because they're hungry. Uh, and that sometimes leads into conflict because people who are scared of dogs may not want dogs to be coming close to them, but they also want to have a snack on the beach or something like that. But because the dog is hungry now, then the dog is trying to approach the human, and then the human thinks, oh, does the dog want something from me? How do I shoo the dog away? So sometimes they pretend to pick up a rock and throw the rock, pretend like just like a whole pretend thing. Sometimes they pretend to throw a stick or something like that. And a lot of sometimes conflicts escalates on that because um, after a while, then the dog learns also if certain side of actions are going to be threatening, then they start barking. Then the human thinks, oh, definitely this dog is going to attack me. Then they try to, you know, up their arsenal a bit and then get something heavier to protect themselves. And so, if only people understood what the dogs want or what the dogs are there for, uh, a lot of the conflict can be de-escalated.
Yeah, because it becomes self-fulfilling, doesn't it? Almost. So are there those who do interact with the dogs though, who do share their food, share space? Are the dogs interested in any human direct connection? You know, do they kind of do appeasement stuff to get the food, and then they just want to have the distance, or are they quite happy for kind of being close and having
I don't
that?
think you can generalize because it really depends on what experiences the dogs have had, right? So you'll see all sorts of dogs. You'll see dogs who do uh, want to be around humans. Uh, for the most part, what I've observed in the free living dogs is that they like to be around humans, but not in direct physical contact with humans. Uh, so once they're done, once they get their food, or once they get a bit of scratches or pets or something like that, then they are happy to move a little bit to the side and then sit by themselves. um, but that's specifically for the beach dogs. For the urban dogs, especially where I live in the city, where this is traffic so high, uh, a lot of dogs tend to settle outside restaurants, cafes, places where there's easy access to food. Unfortunately, in the cities, there's a huge issue of garbage disposal. So you still see a lot of streets with like just garbage lying around. And then dogs tend to scavenge. It's such easy access to food, right? So we see a lot of dogs from the outskirts of the city move into cities because it's easier access for food. And that's one of the big points, because uh, the government tries to do a lot with their animal birth control programs, but it's just never going to be effective because of garbage, mainly because the more, even if you neuter the dogs, because there's such easy access to food, new dogs will keep coming in um, into the city.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
as in terms of threats as well, right? We see a lot of injuries, physical injuries in dogs in cities as well. Uh, a lot of I mean, vehicle accidents, yes, but a lot of small wounds then which get become bigger, become like infested with maggots, um, and unfortunately a lot of deaths as well. The good thing is, in urban cities though, there is a better network of volunteers. So we have different WhatsApp groups. We have like a big citywide group, then smaller groups where we coordinate. And this is all like our personal effort, right? Nobody is funding us or nobody is taking care of the bills. It's just people coming together. They see a dog in need, they uh, allocate resources. So different people then, there's some people who are specialized in catching the dog, so they would catch the dog. Someone else would transport the dog to a local veterinary or something like that. uh, Also, because important to remember, we don't have a shelter system, we don't have a place where we can send dogs permanently, for better or worse, mostly better. But we do have animal hospitals where they go, they're there for a bit, and once they recover, they come back. And that's also a major conflict with humans, because the humans want to send the dog away. So if they see an injured dog and they expect the dog's going to go away, they think the dog's just going to go away forever. But then after like 10-15 days, I'm like, okay, I'm going to drop the dog back. And they're like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, that's what we can legally, that's what we have to do, and what's what we we need to do. On that little bit, legally, India is super great on paper with the laws for dogs, but again, with implementation, not too good. I think it's with most countries, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it relies upon the general attitude of the general population. And I think if you have a population, I don't know, tell me how do you view the general population from what you've seen regarding the dogs? Is obviously you have those who have like yourself, who have a lot of compassion, people who come out and do things, and all the kind of society-led, people-led initiatives that you're involved with. What's the norm though? Is it indifference? Is it outright rejection of them? Is there an age thing that you notice? The older generation tend to be more dismissive, younger tend to be more
Uh,
more how does it look?
So I haven't actually taken into account age, but that's an interesting point. I think that's something which I would like to look at. But from what we have observed, is 99% of the interactions between humans and dogs are uneventful. They're indifferent. Nothing is happening. Literally nothing is happening. Most people ignore the dogs, as if, I mean, they wouldn't even see the dog, even if the dog is injured or not injured. It's just
Mm,
from their point of view, the dog's just there. They don't care. Uh, and which is a good thing. I actually like such people, if you because there's a small percentage of people who do extreme things from a positive point of view for the dog, like maybe like me, and there's so many like me, thankfully, as well. But there's also a very small percentage who would go out of their way to cause harm to dogs,
mm,
uh, by either beating them up, poisoning them,
yeah.
intentionally running over them, um, you know, and that's the challenge, because the how do we convert these people to go into the neutral space? Uh, it's absolutely okay to not love dogs, right? I mean, you don't have to do that. It's completely fine, but there should not be a sense of, oh, I have to take action if I see a dog. Uh, and I think a lot of it happened because a lot of adults have been bitten when they were a child, so they have some sort of fear. It's mostly out of fear, of course, right? Uh, so that's the difficult part, though.
I think that's the same in any setup, really. I think we see it here with the seagulls. We have a lot of seagulls here because we live by the sea down in Devon. Most people are just unaware of them. Most of them see them as a nuisance, actually, and they'll bat them away, but they don't want to necessarily hurt them.
Yeah,
Some people will deliberately in their car try and run them over, but like you say, they're very few of them. You have people like ourselves. We have the ones that come and knock on our window because they want to be fed. So
yeah,
we have our kind of adopted seagulls that come to us. So I think it's that spectrum on all things, and a lot of these things that you kind of alluded to earlier does connect to things like lack of kind of when we think about attachment theory and all these kind of things, and what we know
yeah,
about young children who are having insecure attachments and what that looks like and what their ability to connect to. And also there's a great little meme, I've seen it a few times really, that because again we see it here where the kids are chasing the seagulls, and actually in having an intervention to stop the child chasing the seagull saves 2 lives. The meme is because the child learns to have
yeah,
more empathy for living things, and the seagull has a better day too.
yeah.
And that's what I think is what's so really powerful about what you're doing with going into the schools, because it's very clever, because it's about influencing that next generation. And a lot of this stuff does come from lack of awareness. And from what you've said when we were talking off camera before about how the encroachment of the cities and how you end up with the blurred lines for the rural, and people having to adapt to that. A lot of people are stressed in those environments, so therefore the dogs are more of an inconvenience. And a lot of the dogs maybe might have come from rural back in the back,
Yeah.
back along their line, and now living in the city. It's a relatively new thing to navigate, I think, for some, and it is that lack of awareness, and especially if tell me a little bit about kind of culturally, societally, even religiously, I guess, if there's a religious component about how dogs are perceived and perceived anyway.
So, I mean, there's a strong significance of dogs in Hinduism, and they are supposed to be respected, right? But I feel, in general, when it's convenient, people would respect animals, other people, etc., etc., right? Uh, Even if it's in their religion or not. But when it's inconvenient for them, that's the most important part. If it's inconvenient for you, are you still respecting others, whether it's people or animals? And that's something which, even though dogs have significance in our religion, in our culture, in our society, uh, for example, I have so many friends who say they love dogs, but the moment there's a dog who is barking at night, they're like, can we just remove the dog?
Yeah.
Uh, and that's something which, unfortunately, I feel in recent times that patience is becoming thinner and thinner in general, and that's leading to more conflict. And um, I think as a society we have less tolerance of other people and other uh, animals in our environment, and I think that's something which really needs to be taught, imbibed, to be accepting, uh, to be kind, right?
Do you think that, and I think we can see that, and we can see that in our society over in the UK. I think there's definitely an element of lack of, a reduction in tolerance. This notion of being inconvenient, I think that's such a good way of seeing it, because quite often people say I love my dog. What they really mean is, if my dog behaves in that way, I can love them. And if they don't, then it's, and I think we have to be mindful about what true love is, and that true connection can be regardless of those kind of things. But and of course, the modern day world is a tricky one to navigate, even for us humans. But it was interesting you mentioned earlier about how some use comparisons to the kind of Western view of dogs and what they do as being a way of saying, well, this isn't right. We need to that's right.
Yeah.
Do you think that permeates into other aspects of this for you over in India as well, about the kind of influences there and how it kind of causes friction with what was perhaps working before? And like you say, the way of looking at dogs previously?
I mean, even before, right? Even before, even now, um, to be honest, there's no problem. There's very little problem, because as we've seen, like most of the time, 99%, nothing is happening. There's no issue with the dogs. It's only that 1% when something is happening. Then of course you have to take action to make sure the dog and the human, they're both safe and protected. But uh, because people are influenced by how societies in the Western world are functioning, uh, and for example, influential people, right? People who work in media or own media houses, they have been abroad, they have traveled to the West, they have seen how things are, and then they have the uh, power and ability to spread messages, influence people. So uh, it doesn't matter, right? There might be one incident in one part of the country, but then that gets shared over social media and print media as well, as if, oh my God, it's such a dangerous thing that one particular dog has done. And of
Yes.
course, in that isolated incident, it's terrible. Uh, but when you just spread that as if, oh, all dogs can do this, then that
Mm.
just brings about so much fear in people. Um,
And we see that over here, of course, and of course, there's never any understanding, even with those dogs, about why those dogs have done those things. We
yeah,
just focus on that behavior, and we create that kind of devil dog
yeah.
notion.
And we have a really sad system as well. So, for example, uh, if there's a dog who is chasing people or attacking people, then the system is take the dog away and put him in a government shelter for 10 days to uh, see if there are any signs of rabies. But that government shelter is like really bad, underfunded. Doesn't The dog does not get, proper food, and then after 10 days, the dog is released back in the same environment, super stressed, uh, probably very hungry, and then not at all. Nothing has happened to actually reduce the conflict between the dog and the humans.
Mm.
Uh, and there's no that's there's a, it's like a system. There's no system in place to help both humans or dogs. And yeah, I mean, there needs to be something, but we are far from it.
And what situation? Because obviously there's many people who take in the street dogs and take them in to their
Yeah.
homes because they perceive, I guess, that the dog will be safer with them and get on with things better. How prevalent is that? And also with those who do bring in dogs into more of a domestic environment, what is their general outlook? Are they more likely to still be thinking in terms of the dominant structures? Because, I don't know whether that was a thing over there or whether they're still looking at more of a naturalistic relational based.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of dominant structure still there. I mean, if you think about it, right, Barks is the only organization in India that is advocating uh, for a different way, or trying to look at things from the dog's way. And there's so many others there's thousands of dog trainers who would, you know, influence humans to be the dominant person. Otherwise, if you don't dominate the dog's gonna dominate you, is the popular
Mm.
thing, right? And uh, a lot of people who are adopting dogs from the streets, they are a bit more aware, more mindful about. But when you run into issues and you seek help, and you get help from somebody who claims to follow one particular path which is not good for the dogs, if it's communicated well enough, you tend to accept it, right? So unfortunately, a lot of people do tend to control their dog to the extent where uh, they would 100% be better off on the streets. Um, but again, it's still a very gray area, right? You can't definitely say, because I do a lot of work in adoptions and rescues as well. And sometimes the life on the streets for the dogs is really bad. It depends on where they are exactly, how the environment is, how the people are. and you can't necessarily influence communities immediately. So if there is a community that is just terrible for dogs, harming the dogs, sometimes poisoning the dogs. And of course, you want to follow the legal channels to, you know, make sure there's some justice. But the justice system in India takes years, so it's not a practical solution. So in that moment, you have no option. But if you want to save the dog or save the dog's life, you have to take the dog out of that environment. Uh, as much as possible, what we want to do is try to make that environment better for the dog so that the dog can carry on living there. Because taking a dog out of the environment is a lot of economic resources as well, right? And then the finding somebody to adopt that dog is also not the easiest to process. Of course, that's something which you guys also see, right? I mean, adoptions are uh, challenging. Uh, Not everybody wants to adopt, not everybody. And then even in that adoption, they have preferences. They want younger puppies, they want male dogs, they have color preferences. Uh, so it's not always easy, but then that's where it gets so stressful for volunteers is to, okay, what do we do? We have no good options. Um, and I have no answers, but we try to.
Joe, I think on some levels, it's amazing how many similarities of what you're talking about relate to here in the UK and other places. I'm sure, when you think about just people's expectations of dogs and what they want, and like I say, even picking them by their color, or, and I think a lot of it comes down to I like to think the majority of people are not deliberately cruel or difficult. It's because they're just unaware. There's a huge unawareness, and I think it's a shame, especially when you think about. We'll come on to this bit next, I think, from your observations and that what these wonderful dogs have to teach us. This is, as you say, Sindor talks a lot about this and the barks, and it's thank God for barks, really. I think, and what they're doing, not just over there, but what Sindor's bringing, and she's coming over to the UK next week, actually, and giving a presentation over here, which is going to be great. And it's such a shame when you think about these dogs who've come into the home. These dogs are all about making secure connections and feeling safe, and us learning their safety needs on their terms, without them finding themselves in some kind of dominance-based hell where all of those freedoms are now taken off them in quite a big way, and the poor caregiver is probably building up problems for themselves, more than most dogs, actually, when you think about with these dogs coming in. So what is it then that you have really learned yourself from being around these dogs? And I think it's worth saying, actually, that I know you get involved with a lot of these operations, but you also have dogs. You have a little rescue of your own, and you have dogs that come in, especially those who've been injured, and you help kind of support them.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of what I call life real experience. This isn't from a textbook. This is, I'm doing it, I'm seeing it all the time. What are
Yeah.
the big things that you've learned from these things about who dogs are and what they need, and things that you feel are probably universally applicable as well, not just for them in their life?
Uh, I mean, there are a lot of practical learnings, but the biggest philosophical learning is that no matter how much I learn, I still know so little about dogs or nature in general around me. Uh, and I was just having a conversation day before with a elephant rescuer, uh, and he told a very fascinating story about his own dog, a community dog. The community dog had made friends with a snake within the community, and the dog would gently hold the snake and bring the snake to the rescuer's house just as a thing. And I'm like, I mean, I freak out. I was like, if I see a dog near a snake, I would freak out. But
Mm.
just to see their companionship, uh, and how the snake was okay with that dog, and the dog was okay, obviously, was fascinating. I'm like, wow, I would, I mean, there's so many things that we just don't know and we will never find out. And that's something which I see with every single dog who comes home, whether injured or abandoned, or is a young puppy who has, unfortunately, their mother has passed away, uh, they they all um, they all adapt so fast. Uh, okay, bad things have happened, but we're just going to try to make the most of life that's there right now. And I think that's one of the things which I've learned is to uh, instead of thinking, okay, what can I do actively to make your life better? I'm more thinking, okay, what are you doing yourself to make your own life better, and how can I just create that uh, opportunity or space, or even not be an interference in your own process of recovery or healing, or just, not just physically but emotionally and mentally as well. uh, and then the less I do, the more they tend to benefit, uh, which has been quite helpful to see. uh, be- but it's difficult to share this message, because people want to intervene and people want to
Mm.
control.
I'm just really moved hearing you say what you just said there, because it's powerful. You say it in such a matter of fact way, but actually it's powerful because I think for many people who think they know about behavior, dog behavior, human behavior, what they actually know is just how to make another behave.
Yeah.
It's a big difference, right? And what you're talking about there, that level of connection, that level of being, that level of, you're holding that space and really on a deep level, like you say, interfering as little as possible, because Sindel talks about this notion of having true trust. Trust isn't just, I trust you to not bite me. It's like, I trust you to behave. And I think many professionals listening in that will really resonate, because that's the journey we're all on to try and get to that point. How can we just, it's almost the emancipation of dogs, especially for here in the UK, giving them the freedom to behave, and
Mm.
allowing ourselves to let go of some of this kind of notion that somehow if we don't intervene early, we'll end up with this kind of wild dog that'll go around running, ruling the roost and running around biting people, whatever. If we don't get on top of these dogs with the challenging behaviors, and it's a big thing. Actually, it's a big thing, and you've found that through just those connections and seeing these things, and also recognizing that for many of these dogs, because I think their survival circuits, if you like, are closer to the surface and haven't been messed around with, if you
Yeah.
like a lot of the dogs that we see here in the UK, where those kind of intrinsic needs have been pushed back in favor of extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
You end up with more resilience with these dogs, even though they're experiencing a lot of things. In fact, their level of kind of regulatory state, their homeostasis process is pretty good.
Yeah. Um, and plus they have a better dog support system as well, right, around them, because they have their own families and friends that they have made over a period of time. Um, and that's something which unfortunately pet dogs suffer from a lot, right, of being the only dog in the household. Uh, I was having a conversation with my supervisor about, pet dogs versus free roaming dogs, and uh, we are trying to think of pet dogs are never become adult dogs in a way. They never get to experience an adult dog life as an adult dog in nature would do. Would never have families, would never have to move around, or just explore different areas, and they always have this high dependency on humans for food, right? Basic as thing as food. A lot of dogs have a high dependency on for urination and defecation as well. Uh, so they always remain like literally babies, which as a dog point of view, I feel very sad about, because it would be nice if any animal gets to uh, experience adulthood, how an animal would in nature. Um,
And that's very profound, of course, because it brings us into an area that it's hard to go to think about whether we should even have dogs in that sense, because
yeah,
that's part of the thing that we recognize in the domestic dog population here in the UK, is that they are kind of caught in that kind of, especially when we look at the difference between a lot of the wolf studies and a lot of the domestic dog studies about the difference in that level of maturity and what that means, what it looks like. And I think it wouldn't be so bad if the social attachment side of stuff was in play there, that a lot of dogs, and it happens here in the UK, of course, because again, because of a lack of awareness, most people see training as being the most important thing rather than being a part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So there's very little chance for that dog to say, actually, I'm struggling now. Can you help me? What's going to happen next? How are we going to do things? It's more about compliance. So it's kind of the worst of all worlds. If that animal is going to stay in a more juvenile aspect state, if you like, if there was a secure attachment there, when we think about it from an attachment lens, it wouldn't be quite so bad. Because it's like, yeah, I see that, and we've got this, you're my secure base, and we can have fun together. But if you're not even feeling experienced in that, it's very challenging. And I should think, especially for a lot of these dogs who are first generation, if you like, coming from the street into domestic home and losing that dog support structure, that lovely social connection that's there with their other dog friends, and not getting it with the human, that's really challenging.
And the dog did in all of this, at no point did the dog choose this life, right? So it's always the humans who have intervened and forced the dog to live in this new environment with new people, and still have those expectations for the dogs to behave in a particular way that they want the dog to behave. And that's something which, I mean, I sometimes I understand from the human perspective where they want to control, and when things are in control, you feel better about things in general. Uh, but having that sense that you should not be controlling necessarily what another individual does around you, and still have a very healthy relationship with that individual. I think that takes time, especially when people think they have rescued the dog. So they feel that the dog owes them, because you're giving them better food and, shelter and a bed to sleep on and stuff like that.
That's interesting. I think this is what a lot of these discussions are about, especially as dog centered care as a group, really, is just because you said earlier, I'm not sure whether you said it today or when we said it before, but there's not necessarily the right answers to this stuff. It's not right and wrong necessarily, because everything's different. And there's lots of pros and cons to things, because of course, a dog that ends up in a home environment, they're likely to maybe be healthier physically, and they're not going to get run over potentially, or whatever it is, all these kind of things. But then emotionally and socially, they might be lacking this. And I think we have to just recognize when I say invite, because I say they wouldn't, so the dogs don't really have a choice. But when we do kind of bring in not just dogs, any animal actually into our lives, we have to find the best ways to find that middle ground better. And especially this notion, you mentioned it there, that just our own perception of safety might not be the reality for another, and that goes for other humans in our lives as well. Actually, there's a saying, I've said it before, which is in human psychology, which is the path to coercion is often laid with good intention, because quite often we think, I know what's best for your safety, but that might not be your experience of that safety, and that's definitely the case with the dogs.
Yeah.
I've got some questions in the group. I could ask you some questions here. I'm just going to ask you because I think it's interesting. Trisha said, are the beach dogs more pure genetically free living as compared to the urban dogs, with many pet dogs now in their genetic makeup?
So I had a conversation with my supervisor about this, and he's of the opinion that after a couple of generations, the weak DNA, the genes would be removed anyway from the system. So if a pet Labrador mates with a free living Indian village dog, maybe the puppies would be a mix, but then maybe 2 or 3 generations on, the weak genes would be kicked out anyway. So again, I don't know if the beach dogs are more pure in that aspect as compared to the urban dogs. But a lot of people tend to abandon their pet dogs in rural areas, in like far away from the city, so that they don't have to think about if the dog can make his way back to the house or not.
Okay. Do you think these are such general questions? I'm really sorry they're because they're like say every individual dog is different. But do you think more on a general level, the rural dogs might get the best of both worlds a little bit, and as far as they have the space, they have the local populations who are generally a bit more connected to them, and they're able to live their life than the extra pressures of the beach and the urban dogs.
Um, so at least from what I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of rural dogs, uh, there were a lot of dogs who were skin and bones because access to food was very limited or challenging, or there's no access to regular food, right? Sometimes you would find something, but for days on end you might not find something. And then if in that aspect, if you get into a fight over food, or if you're moving from one area to the another area, and those dogs are territorial, and then if there's a fight and if you get an injury or a wound or something like that, then there's no medical aid available at all for that dog. Then it's a very slow, painful time, and the animal dies. um,
And this is the clear message, I think, that there is no definite on this stuff. There's the pros and the cons, and there's all the kind of nuances. HS, is welfare still state by state dependent? I believe there were some issues in Kerala many years ago with culling to control the population.
Yeah, so Kerala is a state in the south of India who uh, is notorious for culling dogs. Uh, and it was very interesting because one of our research team members is from Kerala, and she was tracking dogs who have reportedly killed humans. Uh, so I haven't had a chance to have a conversation with her as to what's the latest. Uh, but there is a lot of conflict, and uh, there are moments where she is captured where uh, without being provoked, the dogs are attacking humans. Uh, and if there's a huge group of dogs, a pack of dogs of 10, 15, then it can get really scary even if you're an adult male.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so,
I think it's really great what you're doing with the visiting the schools, as you say, and also the mediation that you do to kind of mediate any conflict. Because probably when people, especially if a lot of the time people are just indifferent, the times they are aware are when they're feeling negative emotions.
yeah.
And that has a big impact, of course. And I think, and how you're supposed to deal with those kind of things. And do you find the kids, they pick up a lot from their own parents' anxieties and stress and their own parents' experiences?
Entirely from the parents, right? So no matter, I think even though I know a large part of my workshops does help them individually, but when they go home, a lot of times uh, dogs are portrayed very negatively by parents if they have had negative experience in the past. Uh, so that gets very challenging of how to then uh, you know try to get through to the parents. But now, because a lot of people have dogs at home, that's slowly changing, but it's still. uh,
And kids can be very persuasive, of course, which is why it's a genius thing to focus on the kids, because it's that kind of parent nag thing, isn't it? And also parent shaming that kids are really good at.
yeah,
How
yeah.
could you do that? So when we think about your book, then, so the dog who goes to school, and it's only available in India at the moment, I think. But having read it, we need to change that because it's such a great book. And what I love about it is just the kind of general premise. You got the main character that goes to school and meets a street dog on the way, and the dog comes to school, and everybody knows the dog, and there's a lot of compassion for the dog, and then the dog goes missing. And it's just, each page you think, find the dog, where's the dog, where's the dog? And just when you think they're going to find the dog, they still haven't found the dog, and it's really quite tense. I find it quite. And I think it's a great book because it shows the connection even with the human characters regarding compassion and caring, and it doesn't necessarily see the dog as any different as part of that. And I think that's a really strong message, I think, especially for kids.
Yeah, and that's reality, right? So it's not fiction, because um, there is a lot of compassion towards not just dogs but other animals, right? And birds as well. Uh, but again, when it's inconvenient, is the compassion still there?
Mm.
And that's something which searching for a missing dog is extremely inconvenient, because you have to stop what you're doing, you have to go into different spaces, look for the dog. uh, and even when the dog was found and was in the animal hospital, even for the kids to go there, spend time with them, so uh, taking time out of the day, inconveniencing themselves just to be with another uh, individual, in this case a street dog. I think that's an important message, where uh, you know even when things are not there easy for you, you can still show compassion towards others around you.
And that's a strong theme from the book. And I was saying, I think uh, I know when we spoke before I read it, that you weren't sure whether it would land really about, we say in the UK or other places, and maybe, but I think it will, because these messages are universal.
Mhm.
And the convenience thing is a really important one. People, using that kind of image of crossing over the road, walking by. There's a lot of reasons why people walk by and don't get involved. It's not always because they don't care, it's because they've got other stuff that they're dealing with and they don't have the capacity for that. But I think it is about understanding the lived experience of others, and the dogs, and all the characters in the book also. You really have a connection with them. So I think we do need to get it more widely looked at. And I think for schools, it's a great conversation start. That's what I love about it. There's so many threads in there. Again, it's beyond the dogs, actually. It's not just about dogs. There's lots of different things that we can pull from that book, I think, that's great for kids to look at. And as I say, even as a middle-aged man, I was still taken by it, and I was still feeling the tension of it when it's like, oh, yeah, please come home. Well, it's great. Well, that the time's flown by. So I know there are some people coming over from Kimbrophis.
Right, right, right.
They're coming over to see you next year.
So yeah, that was a very thing which happened out of just randomly happened, because I, more than arranging anything, right? I just want people to come visit to see the dogs. I feel spending time with them, observing them, learning from them, is a very rich experience, not just as an individual, but as professionals as well, and with behavior especially. Uh, so they about around, I think, 45 people are coming over 4 tours, and we are going through different environments, different kinds of spaces, urban, rural, beaches, of course, very highly touristy. So I'm going to take them to the Taj Mahal, and not for the Taj Mahal, because the dogs inside the Taj Mahal, they are they're quite relaxed. There's like huge gardens. They're always resting, playing, very comfortable with people. Uh, but on the outside of the Taj Mahal, dogs are suffering. So it's a very huge contrast in the dogs in that city, around tourist spaces versus non-tourist spaces. So there's lots to see, lots to learn, uh, and I'm quite excited. Nothing of this sorts has ever happened. A lot of people in India are still cannot believe it. Like, they are very close to just borderline ridiculing me. Like, why would anybody come to see the dogs? Like, because all of them walk past the dogs without even caring, right? So they're thinking, how come an animal which is ignored every single day can be of so much value for somebody else, that they are actually making a trip from the US, from Australia, Canada, far away, uh, to see how they live their life. And I think that's fascinating. And I'm really hopeful it does well, so I can keep doing it every year.
And I think, if we bring in kind of colonial past a little bit about the difference there when that happened and the dismissal of dogs, and how, Sindor talks about this a lot. Especially when the British came over, they couldn't get their heads around the street dogs. So what are they? Why aren't they either in a home or, in the wild? They couldn't get their head around. So this is a different form now. I think the power now belongs to the dogs, which is really amazing. And the awe comes from the people coming in from America and other places. And I hopefully that helps people over there with you recognize that there is an importance for these dogs, actually, that people are interested.
And that's what I'm hoping out of it, that people in India start then seeing them as more than just a dog, or more than just there around. Because I know some people who value, economics, and if they see, oh, somebody is paying from the US, especially since we are influenced by the US so much anyway, right? If they are coming there just for the dogs, okay, there must be something in them that, people are valuing. So what is it? And then maybe that curiosity brings out some compassion and empathy for the dogs. Ultimately, everything is for the dogs, right? To improve.
That's it. And I think, and this is what I love about your work and the things you talk about, and Sindor's work and others, because there's a deep richness there about who dogs are and what dogs need more generally, that we can all take and support what we're thinking about regarding moving beyond some of the kind of old received wisdoms, really, that we've been stuck in. I think that's important. Something fell over there. I'm hoping to get over to India next year, as you know. So hopefully I'll get to see you when I come over. And great. Well, thank you so much for tonight. And we've had some great comments in the group. And I really appreciate your time. Where can people find more information about you and what you do?
I used to run an Instagram channel quite actively, but I want to delete social media as much as I can. So I'm on indefinite break from that. So for now, nowhere, but in some time, somewhere is is all I have.
Well, your thoughts, your observations, the things that you might have coming up or whatever you're doing, they're always welcome in the group. So just share in that way. And I'm just sorry I didn't get a chance to meet you in Dublin, but hopefully through the PDTE side of things, we'll get to meet up at another time there. But I'm hoping to meet you in India next year if I can get over. So.
And if Arsenal is close to winning the league, I think I'll come visit.
Okay.
It depends on that.
I don't know much about football, but I don't know how likely that is. But now I'm feeling I want to support Arsenal to make sure they can do it, because it means you coming over. That'd be great. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Look out for some more Facebook Lives. I'm getting back into the swing of things a little bit after my little break. Thank you to everybody who sent me kind of well wishes, and people sent me stuff. One of the infusions I've been calling it unicorn juice. So people have been sending me unicorns, and I've got unicorns everywhere. Got another little unicorn here that somebody sent through the post. I just really appreciate them all. Great, thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone.